The wind began as a whisper through the cottonwoods, brushing pale leaves with a sound like breathing. It stirred the blood-warm dust, lifting it from the parched earth where blood had dried in small, dark pools, hers among them. Beneath the slanting sun, she lay half-covered in prairie grasses, one boot missing, her dress torn across the bodice and black with soil. She crawled from the wagon. She couldn't remember how far. Her face was a map of bruises and caked earth. The flies had come, curious and tireless. Her name was Lona Meyer, and she had not expected to survive. The wagon train had split a week before, arguments over terrain, fevered oxen, the dry well outside Twin Forks. She and her husband, Emery, chose the western route with 3 other families, and a drifter named Callum who claimed to know a shortcut through the high scrub. She remembered her doubt when the hills grew steeper, remembered the worry in Emery's voice. Then fire, then shouting. Men not from their group, faces smeared with ash, a red handprint painted across one man's chest like a brand. She'd clutched the sideboard of the wagon as the children screamed and the livestock scattered into thornbrush. The men took supplies, a rifle, 2 women. Lona remembered Emery falling, a heavy boot against his jaw, then blackness. When she woke, the sun was behind her and her throat was cracked with thirst. Her mouth had the taste of rust and creosote. She couldn't sit up at first. Her left shoulder hung wrong, and she saw a length of her hair caught in a briar, matted with blood. She lay still for a long time. Prairie dogs chittered somewhere close. A single raven circled overhead, wheeling in the high, blank sky. By the second dusk, she thought she was dreaming the figure who crouched beside her. He was slight, nearly a shadow, and smelled of wild sage and smoke. No sound. No words, just cool water at her lips, a strip of hide folded to support her neck. She couldn't hold her eyes open. When she surfaced again, it was night and her body burned with fever. The boy did not speak. His eyes were dark and wide-set, his mouth soft but closed like a gate. He moved with a quiet older than him. Maybe 10, maybe 12. She could not be sure. He did not leave. By the 5th day she could sit, propped against a fallen log. Her left arm was bound to her chest with a wrap of deer hide. Her ribs hurt when she breathed. The boy had started a fire, small and tight beneath a rock overhang. He fed her a porridge of acorn and something bitter that numbed her tongue. When she looked at him long enough, he would look back, but never for long. "Why?" she whispered once, hoarse with disuse. He tilted his head, not in confusion but in quiet acknowledgement. He said nothing, just passed her a strip of jerky and began pressing damp moss to the wound on her thigh. When she woke to find her boots beside her, cleaned and stitched at the soles, she wept. They stayed hidden in a ravine choked with cedar. The boy had built a kind of lean-to, woven with yucca and packed with mud. She could not yet walk, but the mornings grew easier. Each sunrise was an act of defiance. She traced the notches in a tree trunk with her good hand. Someone had marked days there before. She didn't ask. Once she asked his name. She spoke it aloud, "Your name?" but he only turned his face away. She watched his throat work. Later that day, he left a painted stone beside her. It bore a jagged shape like a flame or a broken wing. She understood then that he had no voice to give her, but he would speak in other ways. One night, rain came sudden and hard. She woke to the boy pressed against her side, his small hands clutched at her waist. Lightning opened the sky in sheets. She felt his heart beat through his chest like a bird's. She held him then, awkward and one-armed, until the storm passed. In the morning, he left her a bowl of soaked mesquite pods and touched her forehead in silence. From that point, a fragile rhythm settled between them. She watched him once from a distance, after she could limp farther. He was building traps near the creek, twisting sinew with practiced hands. But something shifted in his posture when he stood, a tension in the shoulders, a way he scanned the horizon, always looking west, always listening. That night, she dreamed of her husband's body laid out in the dirt, and the man with the red handprint smiling through broken teeth. She woke with her fist clenched. The boy sat across the fire, staring at her. Then he reached slowly toward his satchel and drew out something wrapped in hide. It was her locket. Inside, a sketch of Emery, half faded, and a lock of her mother's hair. He placed it in her lap without looking at her. She didn't ask how he'd found it, didn't want to know what else he had seen. Her throat ached with gratitude and grief. "You saved me," she said softly. "You didn't have to." His hands were still in his lap. His eyes, deep with something older than sorrow, flicked once toward the trees. She followed his gaze but saw nothing in the dark, nothing yet. The moon had shrunk to a silver slip in the sky when she first heard the hooves again, distant, deliberate, not wild. The boy froze where he crouched by the fire, his knife half buried in the meat of a rabbit. He rose without a sound and vanished into the brush, leaving Loner alone with the crackle of sapwood and the sudden throb of fear behind her eyes. She did not see him again that night. She sat up until the coals dulled, cradling her left arm and listening to the long, empty dark. In the far distance, a coyote barked once, twice. Then silence. Come dawn, the boy returned, coated in dust. His face was hard now, less boy than shadow. He knelt and tapped once against the earth with a stone, one long, flat scrape. Then he pointed west, 2 fingers. He made a sweeping arc with his hand. The message was simple. Someone had passed. Maybe many. She reached for the branch she'd been using as a crutch. Her legs held her better now, though pain still rode her hip like a saddle. He didn't stop her. He only watched her tie the locket under her collar, knotting it so it couldn't be pulled loose again. We have to go, she said. He nodded once, brief. They moved north into rougher country, where the land buckled and broke into gullies and stunted pine. The trail was slow. Lona's strength returned unevenly, and the boy, he moved like he'd done it all his life, never looking tired, never clumsy. She watched how he placed his feet, how he knew where the shale would slip and where it would hold. He taught her with gestures, how to clean wounds with boiled juniper, how to chew wild licorice root for pain, how to use a rock's shadow to mark the time. He carried his own weight and more. Somewhere along the 6th day, she realized she'd begun to trust him. Entirely, more than she'd ever trusted Emery, though that shamed her. That night she offered to carry the small bundle of tinder. He didn't stop her. It was on the 8th day that they came upon the old homestead. It sat broken-backed between 2 hills, its roof half collapsed, the corral fence gnawed down to ribs. A rusted plow lay tipped against the house like a dead thing. But the well still stood, and when the boy dropped a stone, the sound of the splash came back. She wept as she drew the rope up, cupping the water with shaking hands. He sat nearby, watching the trees. They stayed 2 nights. The second, she found an old quilt in the ruined house, mold-speckled but intact. She boiled it clean and wrapped it around them both. She sang then, not loud, just a low tune her mother had hummed while shucking corn. The boy didn't move, but his hand settled beside hers on the quilt. On the 12th day, the tracks returned, this time clearer, bootprints, 4 or 5 men, a mule cart. The boy traced them with his finger, then pressed his palm flat to the earth. It was still warm. He stood and pointed to the canyon mouth ahead, a narrow cut between 2 white cliffs. She knew what it meant. A pass, an ambush, maybe worse. We can go around, she said, but he didn't move. Instead, he drew from his pouch a strip of rawhide, unfolded it slowly, and revealed a single feather bound to a twist of beads. Apache, though different than the ones she'd seen before. Then he pointed to himself, then to the canyon. His shoulders rose, fell. She stared. You know them. He didn't answer, just turned toward the cliffs. They camped before the canyon mouth, hidden in the rocks. That night she woke to find him gone. Her breath caught, panic clawing up through her throat. Then she saw it, his shape in the near dark, standing before a fire not their own, small and low. Another figure was there, cloaked, older, hair streaked with gray and red clay. They spoke not with words but gesture, swift and clean. The boy's hands moved with conviction, urgency. She did not understand their language, but she knew desperation when she saw it. When he returned, he didn't explain. Just curled against the rock wall and slept beside her without dreams. By the 14th day, her steps no longer faltered. Her arm, though stiff, could lift light things. The boy led them through a dry ravine that opened into a basin of windswept rock. There, scattered in the dust, were remnants of camp, a tobacco pouch, a bent canteen, a child's shoe. She bent slowly and picked it up. Not ours, she whispered. Someone else, others. The boy crouched beside a bloodstain, old but clear. He touched it, then stood. He looked older now, not in years but in silence. When he turned to her, there was a question in his eyes. Not can you go on, but will you? She nodded once and they walked on. The basin led them east, where the land fell into flatter scrub and old trails returned, ghost-worn and sun-hardened. Here the bones of wagons lay cracked and silvered in the dirt, their metal bolts half sunk, their wheels picked clean by wind. Lona saw the boy glance at them as they passed, his brow drawn low, his mouth flat. He never touched the wreckage. They kept low, rising with the sun and bedding down before dark, traveling like fugitives or ghosts. The boy would vanish sometimes, ahead or to the side, returning with news in the silence of his eyes. Once he came back with a small coil of barbed wire and laid it before her without explanation. Another time, a man's boot heel, ripped clean from the sole. Then on a cold morning when the wind tasted of iron, she saw the outlaws. From the ridge they looked small, 5 of them, camped around a canvas linta beside a dry creek. Their horses were hobbled, ribs showing. One of the men wore a coat she recognized, Emery. She dropped to her knees before she knew what she was doing. The boy caught her elbow, held her still. His hands trembled, not fear, fury. They waited 2 days. Rain came thin and cold enough to slick the stones and fill her mouth with grit. She stayed quiet, gathering strength in the stillness. She remembered how Emery's face had twisted when he was angry, how he'd flinched when things got hard. She remembered holding her silence while others made choices for her. She would not flinch now. The boy had a plan. He shaped it in dirt with a stick, pointing to the horses, to the lean-to, to the slope above. He mimed fire, dust, a fall. It would not kill them, but it would scatter them. She nodded. They moved before dawn. Lona circled wide through the mesquite, her boots wrapped in hide to quiet her step. Her shoulder ached, but the pain felt distant now, small beside the slow fury blooming in her ribs. The boy climbed higher. From below she saw him silhouette against the breaking light, slight, sure, already a whisper of what he'd become. Then the rock slide came, not loud, not dramatic, just sudden and real and enough. Stones rained down in dusty bursts, and the horses screamed and bolted. One man was thrown, the others cursed and scattered, and from her side of the ravine, Lona moved in. She did not carry a gun. But she had a shard of metal sharpened on stone and a voice that carried, "Don't move." The man in Emery's coat turned. His face broke into something like recognition, then mockery, then nothing at all. She stepped closer. He had a knife. He did not draw it. "Where's the rest?" she asked. He laughed once. "Dead or gone, lady, you ain't got nothin' left to." Her hand shot forward, the shard pressed to his throat. "I do," she said, "and you're going to show me." He didn't speak again. Not after the boy stepped from the trees, holding a torch soaked in pitch. Lona never asked where the torch had come from. The outlaw held up his hands. They bound him with his own belt and led him from the creek to an old dugout cave where others might not find him. She didn't kill him, she didn't need to. She left him with the fire just far enough away, tied and watched over by the boy, whose eyes never blinked. Later, they burned the coat. In the days that followed, Lona found herself watching the sky more often. The stars returned to her like names she hadn't spoken in years. The boy never left her side now. They made camp in a hollow thick with sweetgrass and built a signal fire that they never lit. They didn't need to speak. Once, by the fire, she took his hand and laid it on her heart. Let him feel it. Let him know, you're not alone. He nodded, eyes glinting in the flame. Then one morning a rider came, a woman, alone. Apache, older than Lona, wrapped in blue cloth and carrying a long rifle slung across her back. She rode in slow, hands raised, her gaze never once flinching. The boy stood. He walked to her without hesitation, and when they embraced, he wept into her shoulder like a child who had been brave too long. Lona turned away. They spoke in signs for a long time. The woman's hands moved like water, quick and full of gravity. When she looked at Lona, it was not with suspicion. It was with knowing. She handed Lona a pouch. Inside, a carved flute, an obsidian knife, a sprig of dried lavender. Tokens, offerings, thanks. Lona didn't know what to say, so she just bowed her head. That night they sat together, the 3 of them, beneath a sky clear as polished bone. The woman told stories with her hands, and the boy added pieces, shy but sure. Lona listened, even though she didn't understand the words. The cadence was enough, the rhythm of survival, the shape of a family taking root. When they slept, Lona did not dream. By spring, the earth had opened again. Wild mustard scattered its gold across the hills, and the arroyos ran with meltwater, pale and swift. Lona and the boy had taken to higher ground, where the wind carried birdsong and pine. The woman, his aunt, she now knew, had stayed behind, not out of distance but respect. They met her once a moon's passing, at the edge of a salt flat where the land turned to mirror. Their stories were exchanged, goods traded, hands pressed in farewell. Lona had taken to moving more each day, her limp near gone, her breath fuller in her chest. The boy taught her how to listen, not with ears but body. How silence could carry the shape of things, an approaching deer, a shift in the soil, a lie unsaid. He showed her how to sleep beneath snow without fear. How to trust a tree's shadow to mark safe paths. She showed him how to read slowly from a Bible she'd found half frozen in a collapsed trapper's hut. They skipped the scriptures. She pointed instead to the words he liked. Fire, bird, sky, safe. His fingers traced each one like it held a secret. He never spoke, but his understanding deepened. So did hers. The past, however, followed as slow and sure as rot. She saw it one afternoon in the shape of smoke too dark to be driftwood. It rose along the south ridge in a tight column, not a wildfire, not a camp, a signal. The boy saw it too. His mouth tightened. He drew his knife and pointed to the saddle where the rocks curved into a hidden pass. Lona understood. Whoever lit that fire knew the land. She did not ask if he thought it was the others. She didn't have to. They moved at dusk. By moonrise they had crossed into the high chaparral, where manzanita tangled thick and cruel. There, half buried in a rockfall, they found a man's body, face down, boots torn, his fingers were burned. Lona turned him with her good arm. She didn't recognize him, but the brand on his neck, a crude red handprint seared into flesh, told her all she needed. One of them, or what was left of one. Beside him, a crude drawing scratched into stone with bone. A figure with a knife and another with long hair. Lona stepped back. Her name was being carried through mouths she had never met. The boy ran his hand over the drawing, then crushed the stone beneath his heel. It wasn't just vengeance anymore. Something deeper had begun to take root. Lona felt it in her spine, in the careful way he watched the trees, the way he looked to the stars like reading from a map she couldn't see. There was a place he was leading her toward. Not away from something, but toward. He had never spoken of it until the canyon. They reached it after a week's travel, during a heat that blurred the air into water. The walls were high and rust-colored, the pass narrow. And at its mouth, a ring of stones, each painted with ochre symbols. The sun, a hand, a spiral. He stopped, pointed to himself. Then to the spiral, then to her. Then his fingers mimed fire and wind and ash. She understood, not with words, but with marrow. This was where his people had died, long ago, driven or burned or broken. He had carried the memory alone, not as a story but a wound. This was where he had survived. They buried the bones together. What remained? Scattered across the rock ledges and dry pits, half a jaw, buttons, rusted tools. The boy did not cry, but he did sing in a way that did not need sound. Lona lit small fires beside each grave. Smoke rose. The canyon held it. At dusk, the woman came again, this time with two others, older men. One carried a drum, the other a necklace of teeth. They sat and listened while the boy laid the stones in a spiral around the final grave. Then the drumming began. Lona did not know the words, but she stayed, and watched, and waited. When morning came, something had shifted in him. A weight left or reshaped. He touched her wrist, gentle, steady, and then stepped back. He was ready to leave the past, to go forward, not alone. They descended the canyon hand in hand. The air smelled of sage and salt. She felt the weight of the locket against her chest and did not flinch. Some part of her had healed, but something still waited below, something left undone. They walked into it together. It was near the edge of the salt basin, where the wind never settled and the air shimmered with heat, that they met the man with the wolf pelt. He came walking alone, no horse, no pack, his boots cracked to the ankle and eyes bright with fever. He saw them from a distance and did not slow. The boy stepped in front of Lona before she could move. They stood like that, waiting. The man stopped 10 paces out. His voice was a scrape, dry and low. "You the woman left at Lonesome Ridge." Lona's mouth thinned. "Who's asking?" He smiled without mirth. "One who rode with M once." He sat in the dirt, cross-legged, no weapon in hand. The boy didn't move. "I left before it turned, knew it was wrong." "What they did, that handprint, it wasn't just show. It was blood oath. You broke it." He looked to the boy. And you, they're hunting you too, though they don't know why. The wind caught the edge of the wolf pelt draped across his shoulders. Beneath it, scars laced his chest like old rivers. I came to warn you, they're 3 days behind, 5 of them, meaner now, afraid. Lona stepped forward slow, her voice was low and steady. Why help us? He lifted his hands. Because I have a sister, and she went west with a man who smelled like smoke. Because I don't believe in letting rot pass for law. He took a long breath. There's a place, an old mine, lost in the Badlands. I can take you there. You won't be found. The boy shook his head. He knelt and traced in the salt with one finger, a circle crossed by 3 lines. No hiding. Lona didn't answer the man. She looked at the horizon where dust had begun to rise. Not storm, riders. 3 days was now less than 1. They moved before first light. The boy led them into a ravine slick with clay and broken with mesquite. The man followed behind, limping, humming to himself under his breath, a tune no one knew but him. By midday they reached a draw, steep walls, a narrow exit one way in, a trap if they needed it. We hold here? The man asked. Lona nodded. We hold. She remembered once, long ago, watching Emery try to shoot a deer and missing clean. How he'd sworn at the rifle, not at himself. The boy wasn't like that. When he strung his bow, it was quiet, measured. He placed every stone, every branch of cover with the care of someone planting memory. The man took watch on the rise. Lona crouched in the shale with a length of iron she'd sharpened herself. No trembling in her hands. The wind shifted. They came as expected. For now, one had fallen behind or turned back. She saw their shapes against the red sky, figures slouched in the saddle, drunk on hunger and old power. The first died to the trap, a deadfall of stone that crushed his mount and broke his ribs. The second came for Lona. She met him with the iron, low and brutal, and when he fell she did not look away. The third reached the boy, but the arrow was already loosed. The fourth ran. The boy stood on the rise, bow still in hand, his chest rising slow. Lona reached him and took his shoulder. No more, she said. He nodded. The man with the wolf pelt buried the dead without words. The boy helped. Lona washed her hands in silence. When it was done, the man turned to go. She stopped him. You could stay. He smiled. I walk better alone, but thank you. Then he looked to the boy. You keep her safe. You already know how. He vanished into the rising dusk. That night, they camped beside a spring that shimmered with copper light. Lona sat with her feet in the water, the boy beside her. No fire, no need. Do you want to find them? She asked at last. Your people, the ones still living. He looked down. Then he reached into his pouch and pulled out the painted stone he had first given her. The flame, the broken wing. He set it beside her, then laid another stone beside it. This one bore a spiral, not past, not grief. Just movement, forward. In the silence that followed, the wind stirred the grass with the hush of old voices, not sorrowful, not lost, just returned. The days turned golden with summer's breath, dry and still and long. The grasses grew stiff with seed, and the sky bore down like a lid of hammered brass. In the valley below, cottonwoods clustered near the river, and the earth darkened where water still ran. Lona and the boy built a shelter there, not large but true. Willow and pine, lashed with sinew, roofed in bark stripped from deadfall. He chose the spot, a small rise above floodplain, where wind crossed without breaking. She dug the fire pit, ringed it with stone, lined it with ash. It was not a homestead, it was not a settlement, it was a beginning. She woke each morning to birdsong and the boy's absence, the rustle of his return not long after, always with something. Roots, bark, berries, a bird snared with care. He moved with the land, not through it. His silence had become language. She no longer spoke as often, either. There was no need. One evening, a stranger came. A woman not young, with skin like sandstone and hair tied back with a red ribbon. She came barefoot, led by 2 girls who stepped light as deer. They did not speak at first, just nodded and set down bundles, cornmeal, jerky, dried squash. An offering and thanks. Lona bowed low. The boy did too. Later, by the fire, the woman gestured with her hands. The boy understood. They spoke long into the night, quiet and swift. When they left, the girls waved shyly, and the woman pressed something into Lona's palm, a braid of sweetgrass bound in sinew. Family, it meant, shared breath. Lona kept it near. As the season turned, word spread. People came, not many. A widow with her sons, an old man with one blind eye and a sack of stories, two brothers with salt-white hair and silent grief between them. They stayed, helped dig terraces for planting, built traps for river eels. Shared tobacco, silence, and the labor of ordinary days. No one asked what had come before. No one needed to. One morning, the boy returned from the hills with something in his hands, a hawk, small and trembling, its wing broken. He laid it before Lona. She fed it slivers of fish, bound the wing with care. Each day it grew steadier, each day it trusted more. Then one clear dawn it flew. He watched it go, eyes narrowed to the sun. When the rains came, they did not flood. The shelter held, the roots took. The river swelled and fell again. The boy began to carve, smooth pieces of cottonwood shaped with care, birds, hands, spirals, fire. He gave them to the children. They tucked them into their belts, wore them like talismans. Lona did not forget what had come before. She carried the locket still, but it no longer weighed. She spoke Emery's name once each season, softly, like smoke. Not from longing, but release. The boy had given her no name, and she did not press for one. Names came from others, from the land, from time. In the village they were making, some called him Wind Shadow, others Hawk's brother. To her, he was simply hers. In the final days of harvest, a child was born beneath the willow, a girl. Her mother, a quiet woman who'd come from west of the buttes, named her with both hands. Fire remains. The boy carved her a bird. Lona held her once, felt the warmth of her breath, the weight of her tiny fingers against her own scarred wrist. The child did not cry, only blinked, slow and solemn, as if seeing the world for the first time and finding it good. The nights grew longer. Stars returned, thick as grain. Coyotes sang in the distance. Fires burned small, steady, shared. And in the shelter that still smelled of cedar and rain-washed stone, the boy carved by moonlight, and Lona wove thread through worn fabric, and neither spoke. They did not need to. They had already said everything, with silence, with trust, with mercy that never needed a name.